Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Championship Showcase, Secrets for Success from the playing field of competition to the field of life. We're speaking with inspirational sports leaders, former athletes, coaches, administrators, sports psychologists, and related professionals who are sharing their life strategies and empowering messages of hope and purpose to support those athletes that are seeking to make a successful transition from the playing field of competition to the field of life. My name is Dominic Militello, and we're so glad you could join us. We have a fantastic show for you today, so let's jump right in. Today we're speaking with the remarkable Maurice Jones-Drew. Maurice, or MJD as he is affectionately known, spent 9 seasons in the NFL with the Jacksonville Jaguars and Oakland Raiders, reaching 3 Pro Bowls and being named an Associated Press first-team All-Pro selection during his NFL career. Maurice rushed for over 8,160 yards and had a combined 79 rushing and receiving touchdowns while catching 346 passes for over 2,940 yards. In 2011, Maurice led the NFL in rushing with over 1,600 yards. Maurice played high school football at national powerhouse De La Salle High School in Concord, California. De La Salle owns the longest winning streak in high school football history at 151 games. The Spartan football teams that Maurice played on never lost a single game during his 3-year varsity career. The legend of his athleticism hit the mainstream on October 6, 2001. In the nationally televised high school football game versus number 1 De La Salle and number 2 Long Beach Poly, MJD scored all 4 of his team's touchdowns, including one on the opening drive in which he dove into the air with a spectacular somersault into the end zone. That's pretty common now, but back then it was very unique. While at UCLA, MJD left his mark all over the record books in his 3 years with the Bruins, including career all-purpose yards, single-game rushing yards, number of touchdowns in a game at 5. Maurice broke the NCAA single-season record with 28.5 yards per return average on punt returns. His career mark of 25.9 yards return places him second on the all-time list. In his final year with the Bruins, MJD was consensus first-team All-American as an all-purpose back and first-team All-Pac-10 selection as a punt returner. With the 60th overall pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars in the National Football League, MJD was a 3-time Pro Bowl selection. He owns the franchise record with 76 career touchdowns, owns the franchise record for rushing touchdowns with 63, owns single-season franchise record with over 15 in 2009. Maurice became the first player in franchise history to lead the NFL in rushing. He is the only player in franchise history with at least 1,300 yards rushing in 3 consecutive seasons. Maurice holds team records for kickoff returns, kickoff return yards, kickoff return average, and TDs. The only player in team history to record 2 career kickoff returns for TDs, including the longest return in team history. His 4.24 yards per carry average ranks 14th all-time among the 50 players who have returned or recorded at least 1,800 yards career carries. 2011, he was named the NFL Alumni Player of the Year. Folks, I could seriously continue for another 10 minutes reading Maurice's stats. It's just remarkable. Retiring in spring of 2015, Maurice heads the Maurice Jones-Drew Foundation, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to assist the underprivileged. On May 16, 2013, the Maurice Jones-Drew Foundation donated $50,000 to Wilson's Children's Hospital to create 2 space-themed rooms for patients. Maurice recently joined the NFL Network broadcast team as an analyst. Maurice, my gosh, I can go on for another 20 minutes just with your stats. We're thrilled to have you. Thanks for joining us today on the Championship Showcase.
Oh, thank you for having me. You didn't have to do all that.
Well, I wanted to set the tone for those that may not be as familiar with your background, at least your stats in the NFL and high school and college. And we really appreciate your time with us. Maurice, for those who may not be as aware with your upbringing and background, can you just tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, well, it's an average story. Grew up with my mother and my stepdad. Mom really fought hard to try to give us, and my sister, is when I say us, is try to give us the best we could. Working crazy jobs. Stepdad and mom didn't get along too well, so they divorced. And it was just me, my sister, and my mother. And so my grandparents jumped in, definitely helped out a ton. And that's what it was all about. It was just about family, just raising everyone. And so I was kind of raised by my mom, my grandparents, aunts, and uncles. And, they did a terrific job. They didn't allow us to get satisfied or didn't allow us to starve either, but forced us and taught us what hard work was like and what it takes to be successful in this world. And so got to be blessed and happy with what they did. They gave us not what we wanted all the time, but what we needed, and told us what it's like to be, what it's like to have to do what you have to do to do whatever it takes to take care of your family.
Nice. Why were sports important for you growing up?
You know what? To be honest with you, just because I was an active kid, I needed to burn off some energy at first. And then, obviously, growing up, I grew up in Richmond, California for 8 years of my life before I moved to Antioch. And it was a little rough. And so you wanted to put your kids in something so that they wouldn't be in those streets or get involved in the bad things that happen. And so my mother did a tremendous job of putting me in baseball early, but it was too boring and it wore me down. And then then we moved to Antioch and we found, I played flag at the Boys and Girls Club, and then we moved to Antioch and we found tackle football. And for me, it was like, this is the only place where you can hit somebody and not get in trouble. It was like, oh, this is awesome, So I went out there and we started to play. In my first couple of years, it was okay. I was just trying to learn the game, and then after that, things just started to click for me, and so it ended up being a great stepping stone of how to learn how to play. I had some great coaches that taught me the right way to tackle, the right way to play, the right way to talk to people, and it was amazing.
So what were the factors, do you think, that really drove you to be such a fierce competitor? Was it the fact that you can hit somebody without getting in trouble, or was there more to it?
Oh, no. Well, the fierce competitor came in with my grandpa. To be honest, I would stay with him every summer, all summer. We'd go out and we'd play basketball, and he wouldn't let me win at anything. And so one of the biggest things that I've learned is, if you take something away from somebody for so long, they're going to want to win, and you don't want to do whatever you can. And once you win, you want to stay a winner. And so we used to shoot free throws, and we used to play catch and do all these different things. And he would make it so tough for me to do things. He would be like, "Oh man, you're just not going to do it, or you don't have it," And so I swear, it seemed like every week it was always something. Even in high school, he would say stuff. I remember one track meet we were playing. We were running against Clayton Valley, and they had a kid that ran like 10.8 or something. And my grandpa was like, "Hey, you better get your goggles on because this kid's gonna burn you." And I'm like, you're making it so bad for these guys that he's not even gonna be close. And he was like, "I'm telling you, man, this kid's faster than what you think, man. He's gonna blow you out." And I was like, "Why are you making it so hard on these guys?" And he was like, "Watch, I'm telling you." And I think that meet I ran like a 10.5 or something, and beat the guy by a ton. And he was like, "There you go." And I was like, "You do this like it's." But what he made it was that. How he made it was that he had me be my best all the time, regardless of who we were running against. If we were running against guys from L.A. or we're playing football against whoever, to go out there and do your best, regardless of the competition. And that's something I thought that a lot of people, they really don't do. Regardless of the score, regardless of who we're playing, we go out there and do your best.
It's interesting because I had somebody tell me one time when I was in high school, or I think my first year in college, that said, we really enjoy watching you play because we never know what the score is. I was a soccer player, but they said we could show up in, the halftime or whatever, and we would not know what the score is watching you play because you played the same way regardless. And so I really understand what you're saying there. You just go out, all out, no matter what.
No, definitely. And I think that's the biggest compliment you can have as an athlete is no matter what the score is, you're going to go out there and give it your all, and people respect that, even in the league. I mean, I played on some teams that weren't the best, but they knew that every week there was going to be some guys on this team that it wasn't going to be like just an easy game. You're going to have to put your best foot forward, and that's just what it's all about to me. And so I'm trying to teach that to my kids as we speak.
Nice. Well, I always like to ask this question, Maurice. What was your attitude towards practice?
Well, see, it was different at each level. As I got older, things started to change a little bit. But as a kid at De La Salle, as a kid at Pop Warner and at UCLA, it was always competition. even in Antioch at the Youth Football League, there was always a guy there that, we were competing to get carries. And so practice to me was, I'm out there trying to be my best to prove to the coaches that I need to, touch the ball and I need to be out there playing. Same with at UCLA or at De La Salle. When I first got to varsity, I was like the 5th running back in my sophomore year, and it was and I try to tell people, if it wasn't for that year, I don't think I would have the career that I had, because again, when you take something away from somebody that they wanted so bad, you change their whole thought process. So my sophomore year, I didn't play at all, and I sat on the bench. I watched a bunch of people play. They put me in sparingly to see if I can do some things. I did okay, but nothing like lights out. I had one big running game where I rushed for like 100 yards, but it was like that was it. Guys are hurt. Now you're out. Put these other guys back in. And so the best part about it is that they took something away from me that I loved, and it wasn't because of them not liking me or anything. It was that I didn't earn it. And so I went into that next year competing with 2 other guys week in, week out, Elijah Bradley and Nate Kenyon, 4 carries my junior year. And I think every day I practiced from that sophomore year on, I knew that I had to go and I had to win at everything. If it was conditioning, if it was whatever, if it was eating the food fastest, whatever I had to do, I was competing with these 2 guys to get on the field. And so, again, I tell people, when you have something just so little where you take something away from somebody or they don't earn the right to play, you kind of change their mindset. And that really changed my mindset from there on. I get to UCLA, there's 10 running backs. And so now I'm number 10, or I'm 9 and 10, however you want to see it, with another freshman back. And we have to compete our way to get to the top, to score, or to be the top running back. So each day it was always, you got to go out there and compete your butt off week in, day out. Make sure you execute on Saturdays or whenever. And the same thing when I got to Jacksonville early in my career, I was competing with Fred Taylor. So it was a good competition and making sure that I didn't mess up anytime I was on the field.
And having a good attitude. I think a lot of guys, some guys don't like practice. Some guy, you hear about this guy's not a practice guy, or this guy's, enjoy it. For me, I always enjoyed practice, man. It was a way to just get away from, all the other stuff and go out there and compete like you're talking about. Having the right attitude is important during practice to have a successful weekend showing, right?
Well, no, definitely. I mean, later in my career, obviously, I started getting, you're getting nicked up and banged up and all those things. I couldn't practice as much, so I had to do more film study. But, I'm always competing. It was always competition to me, and I think that's one thing that people, if you ask around, what the one word that people answer, if you ask it, like one word that describes me, they'll say, like, competitor.
Yeah.
Because I've never been one. I've never backed down from a challenge, never will. And if you tell me I can't do something, just give me time. I promise you I'll figure out a way to get it done.
As your grandpa kind of learned early on with you, that was the way to motivate you, it sounds like.
Yeah, he was a good one, man. He had some good tricks up his sleeve.
Well, you played for some great coaching over there at De La Salle. I know you talked a little bit about what they did to motivate you, but looking back on it, what was your biggest takeaway from being part of the storied program at De La Salle?
We all know what hard work is, but the question is, are you willing to do it? And I think that was the biggest thing. Like, I was a real confident kid growing up because I played on a freshman team that broke every record at De La Salle. And we ended up pulling up like 7 of us off this team, ended up playing varsity the next year. So it was a lot. And so I was really confident, but I didn't know what hard work was. I never understood, to me it didn't make sense to go out there and kill yourself every day in workouts as a kid. Push your limits every day. And so I have to credit, obviously, DJ Williams, who was a player there my freshman year, who took me under his wing and taught me some of the things it takes. And then also Mike Blasquez, our trainer, a guy that stayed throughout my career before leaving the Cal my senior year. He was another guy that wouldn't allow you to slack off. Everything was about getting better and doing everything you can to be the best. And so It was tough, I mean, I just remember some days my sophomore year going in, and that's why I said my sophomore year was one of the years. It was just like that transition year where you have to understand what's going on. But my sophomore year, I would like throw up every practice, and I was like, why am I doing this? It was just like I'm pushing myself past these limits every day, and then obviously you don't see the results in the season. It was just like, man, it was like a fork in the road. And I remember sitting down with Coach Ladd and Coach Edson at the time, and they were like, look, man, either you're going to start playing like you were your freshman year, or you're just a waste of talent. They were like, because you can play, but for some reason you're not playing. And so I was at that fork in the road, man. It was kind of just like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. And I took those next off seasons until the end of my career serious. And I mean, workout warrior, whatever you want to call it, I put everything I had into every workout. I made sure I took advantage of every opportunity, didn't miss a workout, or didn't go on vacation in the summertime. Everything was geared toward being the best player that I could be. And so that's kind of how it went down. And like I said, if it wasn't for those guys at that program that challenged me and believed in me, things would have been a lot different.
Wow, so it sounds like you were all in when you made that decision. You were all in. It sounds like.
Yeah, it's the only way you can do it at De La Salle. I'm not going to lie to you. You can't be half in, half out type of thing.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the UCLA experience. How did the experience at UCLA prepare you for the NFL?
Well, I had a running back coach who is probably one of the top in the game right now, Eric Bieniemy, who coached Adrian Peterson, Minnesota. Obviously, he's in Kansas City now with Jamal Charles. He coached the Heisman Trophy winner and Chris Brown at Colorado, and so I had him at UCLA. And one of the biggest things, and to be honest with you, I had a couple other guys through too. Kyle Shanahan, who now is the OC at Atlanta, he was a GA at UCLA, and Tom Cable, who's a big name in Seattle with their offense and their offensive line and things like that. These guys all played part, but Eric Bieniemy was the one every day, and he was just a mean dude, man. Like, I'm talking about a grumpy, every day was something wrong, he couldn't do anything right type of thing. But what he did teach us, he taught us the principles of understanding every position on the field, which no one anymore knows that. Like, I played in the pros and in college. I played 4 different positions, from the outside wide receiver to the slot, running back, fullback. I played everything. So those are definitely valuable lessons that I learned there, as well as I can work with anyone now. I can literally work with the worst person ever, and it has nothing. It won't even come close to what he was doing.
Yeah.
So I think he taught us about life as well. It wasn't necessarily just football with him. It was a lot of life lessons, he would say. And that hard work that I learned at De La Salle came back into play at UCLA, because sometimes we'd be in practice and he'd say, you know what, I want you to score. And I'm like, well, we got 90 yards. And he goes, that's right, we're going to take some runs 90 today. And I'm like, all right, so it was just little things that I did at De La Salle, the hard work and all the effort you put in throughout the summer that got me prepared for him. And he was one of he taught me protections. He taught me how to read players. If the guy goes out, you go in type of thing, and so many different things that allowed. And we're still, even though he was like a curmudgeon, I guess, or one of those, I don't know what you would call him. He's just a bad guy at the time. We're best friends. Like, we're really good friends today, because I understand now why he was that way. He had to be hard on us, because we had some tough kids. When you have tough kids, you got to be able to coach them the right way and get the best out of them. And so that's what he did. And so, I mean, I'm talking about waking up at 4:30 in the morning, getting punished because another guy didn't do something. Like, it was crazy, but those are the things that helped us when times got tough during the game. We were already ready and prepared for it. And so he had us so mentally tough, so mentally in tune to what we were doing, that we rarely made mistakes at our position. We carried the team to a 10-2 my last year, and we did some really good things.
Do you think that's why you were able to have so much success at the NFL level? Because you tore it up, man, for 8 years with Jacksonville. You absolutely tore it up. Was that a big factor for that, do you think?
Oh yeah, I mean he was another motivator. He was a different motivator though. I remember we played Washington and I had like 320 yards rushing in the first half, and I cramped up because I never ran that much before in my life, and so he goes, hey, you okay? And this is like at halftime. I'm like, I don't know, I'm cramping. He goes, you don't want to be great, man. He goes, you have a chance to do something. You can rush for 500 yards today. He's like, you better find a way to get on the field. And I'm like, I'm limping, trying to get out there. I'm cramping. I'm trying to do everything I can, and I can't get out. And it didn't work. And so after the game, he goes, he was like positive, but he was still negative. He called Chris Brown, who was a guy that I looked up to, coming out, and he goes, hey man, Maurice wants to talk to you. And so I got on the phone, and Chris goes, man, I heard you did good. I go, yeah. He goes, all in the first half, huh? I go, yeah. And then the enemy took the phone from him. He goes, he doesn't want to be great. Don't worry about it. We'll get him straight next week. You don't worry about it. We'll be fine. And the next week, I literally ran every day at practice. After practice, ran sprints. He was just a guy that was like, I know you can do well, but I'm going to force you to do well. And so once I got to the league, I came into another really good coach named Kennedy Pola, who was at SC at the time when I was in college, and he ended up going to Jacksonville. And so we started this guy had made me become so creative. With Bieniemy, we were kind of like robots in a way, but we needed that because I was so raw coming out of De La Salle that I needed to be taught, a pro-style offense and protections and all these different things mentally. So when I got to Jacksonville, they taught me, I just was creative again. It was like, go out there and play like you're in the yard. Like, don't worry about it. If you got to shake a guy and you got to go a yard or two past where you're supposed to go, then do it. And to me, it was crazy because Bieniemy was like, go 5 yards, turn left, and you should be open, right? Well, this guy's telling me, listen, you go out there, you make 3 or 4 moves and and spin, and I'm like, what? Really? And so it took some time, but throughout my rookie year, you could kind of see a transformation of me doing all these different things. And so, when I got out there, it was crazy. They put me out at wide receiver throwing wide receiver screens, or I'm running slanting does, or I'm running all type of crazy things. And then they have me line up in the backfield, running routes on guys. And he was all about competition, which is funny. Everyone throughout my career was all about competing and playing at a high level. And so when I got to Jacksonville, and I'll tell you this, from everywhere I went, from Pop Warner all the way to the league, everyone said the same thing in the offseason, train as if you're the worst player ever at your position, right? And that you're trying to reach to the top. So that when you get to the field, you're confident enough in your training that you'll go out there and make plays. And so that's kind of just how it went down for me. And from Pop Warner, my grandpa I didn't really train, but he would always say, man, you got to be the worst. You go out there and perform to be the best. And then Coach Blasquez, one of his quotes were, train as if you're the worst, so you have the confidence to play as if you're the best. Same with Bieniemy, and same with Kennedy Pola. And so I was just lucky enough to stick with a certain running back coach week in, week out, or year in, year out, every level that had the same mindset, and they helped me out a ton.
Well, it sounds like when you got to Jacksonville, they allowed you to be you, and use all your skill sets and the freedom to be a little bit more creative than maybe at the college level.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Like I said, the college level was, and I needed that. People think that when you come out of De La Salle that you're maxed out, and that's never the issue at De La Salle. They do a great job of getting high school players to buy in and commit, and you're tough. And you learn little things like how to block. You learn things that people take advantage of. So how to block, how to catch, how to run in the open field, those type of things. But we're not tailored to the point where we can't grow anymore. And so when I got to UCLA, I was so raw on just the fundamentals of a playbook. We didn't De La Salle has I don't even think they give you a playbook, to be honest with you. I think it's these are the plays we're going to run. Mm-hmm. There's 12 of them. All right, here, let's go. And so I had to learn 750 plays in a playbook. I never knew anything about that. I didn't even expect the playbook, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
you go from that to the West Coast offense. You needed structure. You needed a foundation. You needed something that was so tough that you couldn't, veer away from. You couldn't go to the left. You had to stay straight. And so I think Bieniemy, he was great for that. Then when I got to the pros, I had that structure, that foundation, and now I could build off it. And building off it, man, you talk about a pyramid. I feel like my pyramid was upside down because I feel like my foundation was like the top of it, and then everything else, because when I got to Jacksonville, I could do with pretty much anything.
Right, right.
They were like, listen, man, you do what you got to do to score. If you got to cut a run, which in Bieniemy's world is like the most negative thing you can do is go left and come all the way back right. That's where all my big runs came from. I would start left, and I'd bounce it all the way back right and go to the house.
Right, right.
It just allowed me to be so much more creative in my abilities and obviously more confident as well.
Right, right, absolutely. When you're in that space where you have the ability to do that, it does allow for more opportunities for you. Changing the subject a little bit, Maurice, what comes up for you when you hear the term accountability on and or off the field?
Well, to me, I think all the abilities in the world you could have, accountability is number 2. Number 1 is availability. You got to be available, and then you got to be accountable. And so, for me, accountable is really just going out there doing your job. The people know every time that you step on the field that you're going to do your job to the best of your ability, and that's it. You can't ask for much more than that. I don't want you to be Superman. I just want you to be the best person that you can be, and do it all the time. And so you would hear players or coaches say, if you're a C player, be a C player all the time. If you're a B player, be a B. I can handle a B player all the time. I can't handle a guy who's a C player, but then sometimes it's an A player, but then sometimes it's a B. Like, it's just too much. And so accountability is you just being the best player that you can be all the time.
Nice, nice. Share with us your most memorable sports moment at any level. If you combine your whole career from Pop Warner to Oakland, what was your most memorable sports moment?
Oh, man, that's tough. I'm trying. Let me think. I guess it would have to be my second year or my last year at De La Salle. We played Long Beach Poly, and it wasn't necessarily what I did. It was what the guys around me did that like made it so special. Because obviously the year before, I had scored 4 touchdowns and we beat them and we did all that crazy stuff. But the second year they kind of loaded the box, and that game put the similar way it put me on the map as a junior. It put a ton of other guys on the map. Obviously, it put up Cameron Colvin, who had a big catch in that game, honestly like a 60-yard go route that he caught. It had Terrence Kelly, who passed away, but put him on the map because he had a ton of tackles and played well on defense, and then he had like a 30-yard reception at tight end. It put a ton of guys on the map and to me, that's what it was all about, was getting my teammates involved with it and to see these guys play the way they play. Jackie Bates is another one who played lights out. And all these guys I named, we all had a chance to go to the league. And so those were I think for me, that was the most exciting thing to see, be able to teach some young guys the way to play the game and be a leader, and then watch these guys thrive in a hostile environment. It was a De La Salle game. It was at home. We played at Cal, but people don't understand. A lot of people don't like De La Salle in the Bay Area. And so I want to say 80% of that crowd was against us. And for these young guys to go out there and make plays as junior and to thrive, that to me was the most satisfying or gratifying thing I've ever had in my career, is to see these guys play.
Amazing, amazing stuff. Let's change gears a little bit, Maurice, to talk a little bit more about what the topic is, and that's about your transition. Can you describe the moment you realized that you needed to start thinking about life after football?
It was literally year 2 of my career. I started thinking about life after football because I have an agent still who we're more personal friends and like a big brother type thing than it is a business relationship. But I had an agent who my second year was like, listen, man, football, if you think about it, once you make it to the NFL, you're on the back end of your career. And you got to try to tough it out and get as many years you can in, especially at the running back position, that you got to start planning for life after football. We'd always talk about it, and we had this plan in place, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even when you're in it, you don't believe it. You're like, when it's time to go, it's time to get there, we'll get there. But I never really got there. To me, I never was going to get there. Regardless of what, I would say the right things, but mentally, deep down inside, I was like, I'm never going to get to that point. I'm not going to need it.
Right.
Because I'm going to play football forever. That's how I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I got older and starting to get in these 2012, I broke my foot. 2013, tore my hamstring. I'm starting getting these crazy injuries. I was like, oh, shoot, I'm going to need this thing. And so luckily, throughout in the early part of my career, my agent had me go to the broadcast boot camp and do some of these other things that the NFL host, or they hold these little the camps for players to go and, if you like music, or if you want to do broadcasting, or if you want to do business, they have these different type of deals. So I did a business one at Warden in San Francisco, and we did the tech thing, which was awesome. And so I got a chance to go and see all these different places and all these be around all these different people, and broadcasting seemed the most natural. Again, when you go to UCLA and you're raw, they have a program there, which I thought was one of the best things ever. They put you in this English class, and the lady teaches you how to speak, not only in person, but in front of the camera. And so the lady, and I forget her name, she would have us, I was the guy that said ax. I always say ax. That was my thing, right? And so she was like, no, it's ask. And I was like, I just said that. Like, I just said ax, right? And so I promise you, it took like 3 months for me to understand what she was trying to do. And once it clicked and I got it, it was just something, it just came natural. And so my agent, who is big time for this, we did a radio deal in Jacksonville my second year, and a TV. I was a host for one of the TV shows in Jacksonville.
Nice.
I did that 2 years in a row, and then that radio deal turned into a Sirius XM fantasy football deal, which was awesome. So I did that I've been doing that the past 6 years. and then I was doing every year in the off season, I go to NFL Network, I go to ESPN, I do all these different things, CBS Sport, I do all these different things to work on just being in front of the camera and getting comfortable. And so obviously when the time hit, which was sudden in Oakland, where I was kind of like, it hit me like, all right, this is it, man, which is, again, one of the toughest things I think in the transition to do is to understand that you're done. You can't play the game that you've played for 20-plus years anymore.
Right.
Is over. I have to start focusing on other things. And so we started to call around, set up. Once I retired, we got a ton of phone calls from NBC and Showtime and CBS and ESPN, the NFL Network, Fox, every major network, and plus a bunch of local ones as well, Jacksonville, Oakland, some other places. And to me, the NFL Network, it was the most comfortable I could be, because I knew people there. I knew a couple people there that I worked with that are still there, and it was just more of a comfort zone for me. And then on top of what we're doing there, it allows you to get better week after week, because it's not live TV. And two, we tape a ton of things and we can do our own things, right? We have ideas. They let us use our ideas, and we go out there and we can produce them. We can direct them however we want to do it. And they're teaching us each thing in the business or in the TV world. So it just happened. I just was one of the lucky ones where it happened where I can get a national gig right off the back. And it all started because in 2007 I had an agent that was like, we need to start planning for life after football. What do you want to do?
Nice. You're listening to the Championship Showcase, Secrets for Success. From the playing field of competition to the field of life, we're speaking with the remarkable Maurice Jones-Drew. So, Maurice, it sounds like you had a game plan in place and you've been executing it. What about the social and the mental aspects of moving away from the game that you put so much time and effort to? Has that been easier or harder than you thought?
It's definitely been easier because I'm going through the same transition with a guy by the name of Ike Taylor, who I work with at the NFL Network. Ike is a 2-time Super Bowl winner from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he played 12 years in the league, and so he's going through that same deal as well. And it's something where, like after work early on, we'd go out to dinner and we'd just start talking, and it's crazy how, like, you can open up to another football player. And I'm like, look, man, I still feel like I should be out there playing, but I'm like, it's just something that my body's telling me don't do it because I was having too many injuries late in my career. Right. And he was like, listen, man, I'm the same way. He was like, A.J. Green never caught a pass on me, ever, in his whole career. And he caught a touchdown on me, and I knew once he did that I was done. And we always have, like, there's always one significant moment in your career that's going to tell you you're done, and that was for him. And so to go back and forth and have somebody that's going through the same thing with you made the transition that much easier. And so we just continue to go out there, and this is something that's new for us. And so a lot of people talk about, like, oh, well, no one knows you anymore. And I'm like, look, man, I went to college in L.A., so I know everybody in L.A. That's not the issue. The issue was having someone that went through this and that you can go through with together. That was the key, because it's like, there's a ton of Hall of Famers at the NFL Network. There's a ton of people that played the game, but no one is going through exactly what I'm going through right now, but Ike is. And right. So that was something huge for in August. And it wasn't that long of a time till I got over it, but in August it was huge because it was like, dang, like I've never been somewhere like August. You usually in training camp, people were like, why are you limping? Why are you limping right now? I'm like, well, yeah, remember I've been playing football for 20 years, so every August I started limping because I'm getting banged and hit. Right. So that's just my natural thing is I'll limp a little bit, and so now as the season got where I kind of wore on, I was asking Ike, like, things hurting on you? And he was like, oh, yeah, man, like my hand, my arm, my shoulders, my hamstrings. I'm like, dang. So the best part about it, again, is to have someone that if you're lucky and fortunate enough like I was, to have someone to go through that with you definitely helped out.
What do you think some of the factors are for a lot of these athletes that do struggle? Is it that they don't have somebody to go through it with, or are there other factors, do you think?
I mean, there's a ton of factors. A lot of guys that struggle. I mean, you talk about medical issues is the biggest one to me. 2 is mentally knowing that you're not the guy anymore. Obviously when you play in the league, people will do anything. They'll just get on all fours and let you stand on their back if they could to help you get somewhere, expecting something in return. But now that you're not that guy anymore, you don't have that, and so. That's definitely tough. I think a ton of other things is you're not used to being at home, and that was another thing. Like when I was here at the house all day, I was just like literally there was nothing. I would just sit around all day. I wouldn't go outside. I wouldn't do anything because it was just I didn't know what to do. I didn't have that structure anymore. I didn't have that routine that I usually have, and so that's something that's huge as well. When you got to find a routine to get yourself back involved in the community or doing something every day that you love to do. And so that's just something that I think a lot of players have to think about. In the NFL, they have a ton of programs for that, for players that are coming off the field into the real world. My thing is always about you have to earn everything. No one's going to give you anything in this world. And I think that's the biggest lesson I've ever learned in my life was that you have to go and take whatever you want, and not by stealing or anything like that, but you take it by your hard work and your effort and your attitude. And I think that's something that I try to, my wife and I try to instill in our kids is that this world is cold, man. Yeah. And if you don't go out there and you're not prepared for it and you're not mentally ready to go out there and do some things that you have to do, it'll eat you up and spit you out. So I just try to make sure my kids are prepared for whatever happens once they leave this house.
Nice. We're just about out of time, Maurice. We really appreciate your time. But knowing what you know now about life and business, sport and business, what 3 things would you say to an athlete that is about to go into their transition or is in it now and maybe and or maybe struggling? What 3 things would you give them if you only had about 5 minutes to share with them?
Well, first thing I would say is use your relationships. You created so many while you were playing. If you did, hopefully you did. Use those relationships. Those guys, they want to help you out. I learned that from a lot of people like Marcellus Wiley, who's an ESPN analyst. He was one of the guys that said, every time I got a business card each offseason, I would send these guys a handwritten letter saying thank you. And I think that's smart. Use those relationships because, again, these people are the same people that are going to help you as you exit out. 2, don't change who you are. So for some reason, there's a lot of players that go to the league and they think they're better than everyone else, and they act that way. You can't act like that. Be you. If you're a quiet guy, be that guy all the time, and people will respect you for that. And 3rd is you have to compete.
So what do you see your role as a leader, and what is your legacy that you want to leave for others, Maurice?
I guess my role as a leader, and always as a leader, to me is to serve. Just because you're at the top doesn't mean that you're the top dog. You're supposed to uplift and make sure the bottom of whatever you're doing is playing or working at a high level. And so to me, a leader is always to serve and to make sure guys feel involved or girls feel involved, whoever. They feel involved and they feel important because of appreciation in the work world right now, appreciation in the sports world goes a long way.
Nice. Okay, so serving, that's great. And the last question, what kind of sauce can you give us on Coach Ladd or any of the coaches at De La Salle?
You know what? Coach Ladd and those guys, it's awesome now being back because being a coach, they don't see you as a player, so they don't have the little straight face and all those things. But, to me, he's still probably the greatest coach I've ever been around. Not necessarily with X and O's and things like that, but the way he gets players to play, the way he can talk to you, he reaches people. I think that's something that it's hard to come by, and it's always something I've always wanted to do. Is to be in that way like him, where he can talk to a kid coming from where I live now in Danville to a kid that came where I came from, and he can relate to both. And so you have to be able to relate to everyone, and I think that's how you get players or young kids to buy into your program. Is that, I mean, again, we've had some of the best come through De La Salle, and they all come back, to see them. And they all come back to see these coaches because at the end of the day, they really care about your well-being. And so that's what it's all about, I think, and he's done a tremendous job. The funny thing is I called him when I wanted to declare for the NFL, and I'm like, hey, man, what do you think? You think I should leave? People are giving me a lot of grief. He was like, hey, man, you go to college to get a job. You got one. Go ahead and get it. Nice.
Well, everyone, we certainly hope you've enjoyed our conversation with the incredible Maurice Jones-Drew. I know I have. You've been listening to the Championship Showcase, Secrets for Success from the Playing Field of Competition, the Field of Life. Maurice, any last thoughts for our listeners, especially around the transition portion of it?
Again, just in everything in life, all you have to do is compete, and everything will take care of itself. Just compete to be the best at whatever you want to be, and it shall all fall in place.
Nice. Awesome. We want to thank you, Maurice Jones-Drew, for joining us, and we encourage those of you who feel you might need some assistance through your career transition, please reach out, get the necessary help you need. You have purpose and you have value. For Maurice Jones-Drew, this is Dominic Militel. We want to wish you all the best always.